everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another book review for you, and that is for Dune by Frank Herbert. This is a reread for me. The first time I read this book was a little under 2 years ago now. I believe it would have been around May or June of 2022. And I wanted to reread this again for a couple of reasons. First of all, I figured it would be topical to do on the channel because the new Dune movie is coming out, which I haven't seen either of. I'd like to at some point, just haven't got around to doing that. But that was coming out, so I figured this could be a somewhat topical video because I haven't actually talked about Dune on this channel. Secondly, I didn't remember very much of it, and in my first read, I was a little mixed on it. I enjoyed the first half to 2/3 a decent amount, but kind of lost interest a little towards the end. And overall, I just thought this book didn't quite live up to the hype the first time around. But I wanted to read it again, see what I thought, kind of refresh my memory because I didn't really remember this all that well. And the third reason why is because I had been strongly considering continuing the series because it's such a popular and influential sci-fi series. And I thought about continuing it because I thought it would be another series that I could try to get under my belt and something that I thought might be interesting. But again, didn't remember this book all that well and wasn't really sure if I'd be that into it. And so before I went out and bought more books in the series, I wanted to reread it and see if I thought that it was worth doing, if I enjoyed this first book quite a bit more than I did the first time, or at least thought it would be interesting to continue, then I would go out and buy more books in the series. But if I did not enjoy this book very much, then I'd just stick with the one. And I have to say, I don't know what exactly it is that changed this time around, but I get the hype with Dune now. The first time, like I said, I thought it was fairly mixed on it. I still enjoyed it. I was still positive, but it was kind of mixed to positive. This time I absolutely loved it. I had a blast reading this, and it was well worth rereading, I think, because my opinion on it improved quite significantly. So to get into talking about the book, there's a lot of things I really enjoyed about this, but I think the biggest thing that I liked about Dune is the world building. To me, Dune is a very world building heavy book compared to pretty much all other aspects. That's the part that really stuck with me. I enjoyed the plot as well quite a bit. The characters were probably the weakest of the kind of what I think of as the core pillars of sci-fi fantasy storytelling to me. But I think that the world building really stood out to me, and I really enjoyed it in this book. I liked it the first time around a decent amount, but it really stood out to me here for several reasons. I really enjoyed seeing the different cultures, seeing the Fremen. I'm not actually sure exactly how it's pronounced. Again, haven't seen the movie, so I don't know exactly how all these things are pronounced. But I enjoyed seeing their culture and the culture of this very different world. Dune, obviously, for those who don't know, and most of you probably do, Dune is a desert planet, or otherwise known as Arrakis, is the name of the planet, and it's basically a desert planet. Sandworms, super hostile environment, that kind of thing. And I think that really was gotten across in this book. And I really enjoyed seeing how that influenced the culture of this world, where something like water, not even just water, but any kind of moisture whatsoever, is highly valued and just kind of, it's something that people want to save. If you kill someone in a duel, then you save their water because it's such a precious resource, and then it's given to the victor and things like that. And that's kind of a prized thing. Or if a person is killed and you cry at their death, that's seen as a very meaningful thing because you are giving water to the dead, basically. And so it's seen as this very meaningful thing, stuff like that, and just the scarcity and the importance placed on water and the worms and how people deal with those, and just the harshness of life on this planet really stuck with me, and I really enjoyed seeing this world and how they handled it, and I thought that was all really interesting. It was probably my favorite part of this book, was getting more of a look at that. Granted, I'd already kind of seen that the first time around, but it really kind of stuck out to me this time, and I really enjoyed that. I also really enjoyed the plot of this book. The plot the first time around didn't really stick with me. I didn't really find it that memorable. You could have asked me, what was the plot of Dune, back before I reread it, and I would not have been able to tell you, really. But I really enjoyed it this time around, and I enjoyed a lot of the themes that it played with as well, which, from what I've heard, are only further expanded upon later in the series, especially in regards to Paul Atreides, who is kind of the main character of the book, who is seen as this kind of almost chosen one typed character, where he is basically supposed to become this leader, this person who is going to lead the people of this planet. And there's hints in this book, and I've even heard, later in the series, I don't know specifics, but, it doesn't turn into a necessarily positive thing. And there's hints of that in this book where he's like, I'm going, if the things come to pass that I know might come to pass, that will be horrible, and there, we'll have to do horrible things, and the role that I'm fulfilling is going to lead to horrible things, and all this stuff, which is a super interesting way to approach this kind of story, I think. And the way that it deals with themes of like religion, because he's then seen as this almost kind of messiah-like figure, things like that is super interesting stuff. And the way that interweaves with the plot, again, is really cool. And just all that stuff was awesome in this book, and I really enjoyed it a lot. And it, again, stuck with me a lot more this time around. And I was much more engaged in that side of the book this time around. The one thing that did kind of let me down with this book, I would say, was the characters, which was also the case the first time around. I've never felt that the characters of Dune are the big selling point for me. I do think Paul, again, is an interesting character, but that's more so because I think of the archetype that his character fulfills and the ways that it, in some ways, subverts that archetype and just kind of approaches it from a very interesting perspective. Him as a character, I'm not as interested in. I'm more interested in seeing how he fulfilling this role influences things later on, and how his story unfolds. And granted, that may make me more interested in his character, and that maybe even sounds like I am interested in his character, but to me, like, he's not himself an interesting character. It's the way that he is used in the story, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does or not, but none of the other characters really stuck with me that much. I enjoyed them. I enjoyed Jessica. I enjoyed Stilgar. I enjoyed Chani. All the different characters. I really actually rather enjoyed Leto Atreides. I thought he was really cool, and there was good character stuff in here, but none of them hugely stuck with me outside of Paul and to a lesser degree Leto, and that to me was just the big thing in this book that didn't quite land for me. But considering how much I enjoyed the plot and the world building and all that other stuff, that wasn't a huge issue for me, because even though I wasn't hugely invested in the characters, despite me typically being a very character-focused reader, so that's what I'm really wanting to get out of it, despite that not being as strong for me, the other stuff was really keeping me going. And so even though that's kind of what I tend to look for in stories, the lack of it being as compelling as I'd like it to be didn't influence me too hugely in terms of enjoying this book. It's a lot of words to say something that probably could be said a lot simpler, but yeah. I also, there was some chapters focusing on the character of Baron Harkonnen, which I was not really that into all that much. Anytime those chapters came up, I kind of felt like I was just kind of slogging through them. I wanted to get back to Paul and all that stuff. So, those kind of held it back a little bit for me, but those were pretty few and far between, so it didn't influence me again too much. Overall, I did really enjoy this quite a bit due to all of that other stuff. So, yeah. Overall, this was a really worthwhile reread. There's not a lot of books that I have reread and really kind of been like, my opinion on this hugely shifted and it completely changed my perspective on the book. There's not been much of that in the last few years for me that I have been really reading a lot, but it definitely happened with Dune, to the point where I would now consider it perhaps among my favorite books that I have read in the last few years. I don't know if I'd say it's absolute like top, top of my favorites material, but it's definitely up there. And I really enjoyed it a lot, and I am definitely planning to continue this series now. I really enjoyed this book. I'm really curious to see where it goes from here, so I do intend to pick up Dune Messiah at some point, and hopefully the remaining books in the series, and all that stuff. Really enjoyed this one a lot. As far as a rating that I would give Dune, I'm thinking like a 9.5 out of 10, maybe a 9, somewhere in that kind of general area. But I did really love this book a lot, so I'd be totally comfortable giving it a 9.5. Again, it isn't quite a 10 for me just because of the character stuff not quite landing as much for me, but everything else was really awesome in here. And I enjoyed reading this a lot. It was a lot of fun and very enjoyable to read, and I'm glad that I revisited it. So that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you've read Dune and what you thought of it, and if you've read it multiple times, what was your experience with it? Was it kind of similar to me? I've heard a lot of people say that Dune is much better on a reread, and apparently that is the case for me. And I think part of that was also just because I kind of already got the basics of Dune, and so I was able to kind of be more aware of the context of things, and the world building didn't go over my head as much because I was already sort of aware of what it was, all that stuff. So I think that definitely helped. If you have reread Dune, once or twice or however many times, let me know how that impacted you, and let me know what you think of the later books in the series, if you think it's worth me continuing. I do intend to continue it anyway, but I know that some of the Dune sequels are a little hit or miss for some people. So let me know what you thought of those if you have read them as well. So that's pretty much it for this video, so thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.